Time we welcome all newcomers and visitors. Thank everyone again for being here. Our greeters tonight are Laura for the women, and she's back there somewhere, and Daniel and Casey for the men. And they'll be available to meet with you after the meeting to answer any questions or get your meeting list. Would all home group members please raise your hand? Let's see how many are here. All right, pretty good turnout. We'll all be available to meet with you after the meeting to answer your questions you may have. If you'd like to become a member of this group, see me after the meeting. Are there any announcements for the good of AA?
Power of alcoholic.
Yeah.
We've come up with the dates for the Mar Mountain Indian Retreat. It's November the 1st to the 4th for campsite 1, and the 2nd to the 4th for campsite 2. It's $6 for your tent, food, and a big book. It's a great weekend for the men.
Is there anyone sick or in the hospital who's in need of a card? That's good. We have AA literature available in the foyer. We also have big books, 12 and 12s, and other books for sale. If you need a book, see me after the meeting. So before I introduce tonight's speaker, and I know that's why you're all here, you're not here to listen to me, I've been asked to give a brief history. Someone already asked, how long is this going to take, Kurt? So I will keep it brief. You know, and I don't know where y'all were 14 years ago, but I wasn't here. I was out there. And but there were a few visionaries, if you will, right here in this room that had the idea to kind of revitalize the Aberdeen group, which was the original Tuesday and Saturday night meetings. And a couple of those people are still here. And I really don't want to start naming names, but I'm going to anyway. Julie, Mary Kay, and Chuck, 3 of our founding members still here and here this evening. You know, the Tuesday night meeting started circa 1958, so there's a long history of this meeting in one form or another. And back then they didn't meet in this building. They didn't meet in this building until about 1960. About a year later or so, they added the Saturday night speaker meeting, and so setting the format for our existing group. We meet on Tuesdays and Saturdays. So the group stayed together for quite a long time into the new millennium, but due to attrition, the original trusted servants, God, they all passed away, for lack of a better way to put it. It became somewhat well, it lost its focus, let's say that. So it was the idea of our founding members that perhaps they'd get it back on track. And with Randall Moss's blessing, a lot of you might remember Randall. He was probably the last of the surviving original members. They came up with the Keeping It Sober group. And from the get-go, it was really, the group had a couple of goals or objectives, purposes, if you will. We wanted to offer a home group opportunity for this building. There's a lot of meetings in this building, 3 a day now at least, but there really wasn't a home group, and so the Keeping It Sober group became that opportunity. And within the home group, we followed the guidelines from the GSO and offered some general service positions. And in the early years, it was Chuck was telling me this, that and I was here shortly thereafter. It was kind of hard to fill the service positions because there were sobriety requirements, and there weren't enough members with enough longevity in terms of recovery to fill all the positions. So they kind of just rotated from one to the other, and so early on. Richard M. was probably our first GSR, followed by Chuck, and then Kelly M., Ryan, Richard again, and then me, and Jonathan is our current GSR, and it's so enlightening to see Jonathan and kind of his class of new members. They're young, they're ambitious. The future of our group really looks positive due to the fact that we've got a steady stream of newly recovered men and women coming to this building, and they're very eager to serve and to get involved, to be part of. And I think that's what it's all about. I personally came to the meetings for a long time. I attended, but this is a spiritual program of action, not attendance. And our group has given the opportunity for many young men and women to become involved. With that, that's enough for me. Speaking of service, again, back when I first came around, it took me a long time to realize that there were other people in here, and I was somewhat selfish and self-centered and focused on me. But after a while, and after I started to come to, so to speak, I noticed that there were some men and women that were really, active and doing things that I swear that I was never going to do. You wouldn't catch me up at this podium, or you wouldn't catch me sharing my story. You wouldn't catch me conducting a traditions seminar or workshop. You wouldn't catch me at a district meeting in any capacity, and you certainly wouldn't catch me at an area meeting and talking at a microphone there. And our speaker tonight, Jerry, I've seen him do all those things, and we've our group asked him to come moderate our group inventory a couple months ago. He's gracious enough to do that. I've heard his story several times. I hope he includes the story about the mange. If not, I'll tell you later. But it might not be factual then. But anyway, he is, Jerry is the epitome of, a grateful recovering alcoholic, recovered alcoholic, and that anything that is asked of me does. And I know that if I ever grow up, I want to be like this guy. So with that, Jerry, come on up.
I'm Jerry Weaver. I'm an alcoholic. Make sure folks in the back can hear okay. My sobriety date is July the 2nd, 1989. My home group is a group called There Is a Solution. We meet in Holly Springs on Tuesday night and Thursday night at 7 o'clock. It's a good group of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're ever in that area, come check us out. We've got a bunch of home group members with me tonight. Appreciate y'all coming out. And a bunch of friends that travel with me, and some other folks that came out. It's really, man, it's good to be sober tonight. Good to be in my right mind and amongst friends. Certainly Moore County is safer tonight, having all these people here sober. And that's for sure. And it's a good night. Congratulations on 14 years. That's That's a long time for well, it's a long time for anything, but it's definitely a long time for alcoholics to get together and actually agree on something and continue something for a long period of time. I've always, you hear people say, oh, little Jimmy relapsed, and act like it's, they're shocked that he relapsed. I get shocked when people stay sober. I mean, it's because it's unnatural. I mean, that's just, most alcoholics aren't sober. And if you're here sober tonight, you've beat the odds, because most alcoholics are out there drinking right now, and most of them are going to die without having a solution. And I sometimes will forget that I'm actually an exception to the rule if I'm sober and I've recovered, and I'm extremely grateful for that. And so it amazes me when we can do something for a long period of time. And it's not easy starting a group. It's I think you just get a coffee pot and a few resentments and the group's going to grow, but it typically doesn't work that way. It takes a lot of work and a lot of people showing up and doing the deal for a long period of time. So congratulations on 14 years. It's an honor and a privilege to be asked to speak on, I'm a guy that could not stay sober before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a lot of people try to help me get sober. I had a lot of places try to help me get sober, and none of it worked until a guy came into a detox and just shared his experience with me, and I was able to identify with that guy, and I was able to, there was an attraction with him that I didn't feel with a lot of the other people that had tried to help me. And I've been sober ever since, and one of the things that guy told me to do was he hoped that when I got better that I would pass it on. And I didn't have a clue what he was talking about at the time. I know what it is now. So I'm a guy who thinks it's a privilege to be asked to do anything. It's an honor to be able to actually get up here and do something, and because there's only two things that have helped me to live in this world sober, and that's the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm a guy that believes I suffer from a spiritual illness, spiritual malady, if you will, and that it can only be relieved and removed by what our literature describes as a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening. And that's what's happened to me as a result of really just giving my wasted and busted life to AA, is that I've had a spiritual experience, and that's not anything hokey or pie in the sky. It just means that slowly over time, by taking different actions, I've changed, and that as a result of that, the obsession to drink was lifted. I was able to form a relationship with a power greater than myself that changed the way that I looked at life, and the way that I looked at God, and the way that I looked at other people. And that a power that I found in Alcoholics Anonymous has come into me and has helped me to have a change of heart and a personality change that is absolutely necessary for a guy like me to be able to not take that first drink. And I'm one that believes that what's in our doctor's opinion, that I was restless, irritable, and discontent. I basically was full of fear and was full of doubt and confusion about life, and felt like I should be somewhere than where I was at long before I ever took a drink. My mind would tell me all kinds of things that probably were not true. I wanted to commit suicide from my earliest memory. I was full of fear, and that I needed a drink probably right when I came out of the womb. At the age of 12 was my first real experience with alcohol, and it lit me up like a firecracker. Just like the literature says, I got a sense of ease and comfort. When I took those first couple swigs of that whiskey and I got it down good, all that fear, doubt, and confusion, it disappeared. And it was replaced with some thoughts that, man, things are going to be okay, the world's okay, I'm okay. And essentially, I had a spiritual experience that night when I drank that whiskey. And I know now that they call alcohol spirits ever since people have been making it, because it induces a spiritual experience. It makes me feel different, it makes me act different, it makes me think different. And I was a guy that I adapted to it quickly. I loved it. I'm not a guy that all my times drinking were bad. That comment that my worst day, I'm gonna try to get this right, my worst day sober is better than my best day drinking. Well, that ain't true for me. I guarantee you it ain't. I can remember being about 13 years old, drinking and being in the pool with a girl named Kim. And, I guarantee you that was better than the day I had today. And it was quite the experience. So I enjoyed it. I loved as a teenager, I loved house parties and strobe lights and heavy metal music, and I loved drinking and smoking a little weed, and I loved getting into trouble. I loved doing things I wasn't supposed to do. I loved sneaking out of the house. I loved getting in trouble with the law and running and trying to hide from them, and I loved getting caught. I loved getting into fights and challenging people, and that whole thing that just kind of went with drinking and partying. I love riding the roads, and I don't know if people ride the roads like they did when I was drinking, but you could just ride the roads forever. Nobody would mess with you, and this was before MAD and all that. And you get pulled over, and a lot of times the law would let you go. And but I love riding the roads, and I'm a guy that when I start drinking, I don't isolate much. I did later on, but I wanted to go somewhere. I wanted to go see what was happening, and so I enjoyed it. I don't believe I was, as a kid or a teenager, drinking. I don't believe I was suffering from any kind of disease or anything like that. I was just a guy that I loved drinking. I loved what it did for me, and it enabled me to do things that even by myself I couldn't do. And basically what happened to me is I became just a chaotic, rebellious guy. I got into a bunch of trouble. My parents got me out of a bunch of trouble. Got kicked out of two county school systems forever, and was asked not to come back. I got in trouble, a bunch of trouble with the law up in Hardin County. Got charged with assault with a deadly weapon and intent to kill, and assault on a police officer. And that's how I ended up in the military. I went to the Air Force instead of going to jail. And I can remember going and thinking that the Air Force was going to teach me some discipline and give me some responsibility, and I was going to get educated, and I was going to teach my family, or show my family I could do the right thing and be a good guy, because I was a guy that always wanted to do the right thing. I always wanted to my family to be proud of me, and I had all these good intentions inside of doing things, but I never could put those intentions into actions. And I would always end up doing the opposite thing. I would disappoint people and get in trouble. And I was also a guy that just kept searching for other things. I blamed everything that ever happened to me on somebody else. It was never my fault. And I always just thought that one day my ship was just going to come in, and I was just automatically going to have money, and things were going to be good. And I had these thoughts in my head that if I just lived somewhere else, or I had a different girl, or that things would be okay. And never once thought that there was anything wrong with me, or that maybe there was something up with me. Although I knew that I was different and I was a little goofy. But when I got sober and was introduced to the idea that we're selfish and self-centered, I at first didn't really understood what that meant. But I know it wasn't long that I started realizing that my life was just absolutely centered around me. I wanted everybody to do what I wanted them to do. I wanted everybody to act the way I wanted to act. I wanted everything to go my way, and then when it didn't, I would just get mad and get angry. I'd start feeling sorry for myself. And my life was just that way. And I'm also a guy that's just full of fear. My earliest memory was fear. I don't know what I'm afraid of, but I'm just afraid of everything. And the only thing that would make that go away and shut that down is when I would drink. And I got married at a young age, thinking that was going to teach me some kind of discipline and some responsibility. And so here I am. I'm in the Air Force. I've gotten married, and nothing's changed. I start blacking out a lot. I start not remembering what I did the night before. I wake up in places and have people have to tell me what I did. And I just kind of thought everybody had blackouts. I didn't realize that not many people actually have blackouts. I woke up one time, I was actually living in a dorm with a bunch of guys, 200 guys in this dorm, and I woke up one morning and I had some women's clothing on. I kind of looked around and I'm trying to figure out what happened the night before, and it's one of those times where you're glad you had a blackout because you just don't want to know what happened. And you know, things like that would happen, and I wouldn't think much about it. I was like, I just kind of blow it off, and we just go on into the to the next deal. And what happened to me was I came to, well, I didn't actually come to, but my father-in-law had started putting some pressure on me to get some help. And I don't really know what he meant when he said that I need help. I mean, I knew that he was upset with the way I was treating his daughter. I don't blame him a bit. But I didn't think I really had a problem. I mean, I just thought that, again, that my problems lied out here, that people would just leave me alone, and if I could live somewhere else, that things would be different, and if you just get off my back. And I think he planted a seed, though, because I started trying to slow down. It was more in the lines of, man, today's the day I'm going to do the right thing. You know, today's the day I'm going to show up and do what I'm supposed to do, and I never could do it. But I came to, or I shouldn't say I came to, me and two guys had left Coates, North Carolina. It was New Year's morning, and I had convinced these two guys to ride to Oxon Hill, Maryland with me to rob a guy. And it made sense at the time. So we're in Coates, and we're going to drive about 320 miles to rob a guy, and we were going to come back. And we could have gone to Benson or Dunn and 8 miles and drive somebody, and probably ended up in better shape. But no, we were going to drive all the way to Oxon, Maryland. Somewhere in between Coates and Benson, which is about 8 miles, we were trying to get to the interstate. I started hearing these voices in my head, and they started telling me that, man, you need to get your life in order. You're going down the wrong path, and you need to do something. I couldn't shut it off. It just kept on coming, and I pulled off at the Robin Hood convenience store there in Benson, and I told these guys I need to make a phone call. I got on the payphone. I called my younger brother, who was a member of his church in Dunn, and he told me if I ever need any help to give him a call. And so I called him that morning, and he said, I've been expecting a phone call. We've been praying for you. And he said, come on over, we can talk. And so I ditched the two guys, and they didn't like that too good. They were excited about going to Oxon Hill, Maryland. I don't think either one of them have ever been out of Harnett County. And I got rid of them. I went and I talked to my brother that morning, and he was getting ready to go off to church, and it was New Year's morning. It was a Sunday. It was just a great day to get your life in order, make some New Year's resolutions. So I rolled in the church with him that morning. I had these pants on. They were about 4 inches too short. I had this old silk shirt on with a disco shirt with a big collar on it. And I'd been out on a run for about 10 days, and I looked rough. And I rolled up in there with those high water pants on, and people were looking at me. And that morning they had that altar call, and I got up there and cried in front of everybody, and people came up and prayed on me, and I think they may have rubbed a little oil on my forehead, and it was just a wonderful morning. And I left there that morning with this idea that my life was just automatically going to get better. And they didn't tell me that, but that's what I heard. And 2 or 3 days later, I was drinking, and I didn't understand it. And basically, what happened was, for the next 2 or 3 months, I stayed involved with that church, and I would go in there drunk. I'd go in there hungover. I'd get up. The guy'd be, it was kind of a hellfire and brimstone type church, and the preacher'd be laying it on you, and I'd get up right in the middle of his sermon and go into the bathroom, do some cocaine, go out in the parking lot, maybe drink a little Thunderbird, and then come right back into the sermon while he's preaching, with no regard that he's preaching, that people are actually listening to him. And I was always paranoid in there anyway, right? And he's one of those preachers that everything he says, you're like, man, how do you know I did that? He must be following me around. And you lose your buzz quick like that. He's shooting me down. And I'm waiting for the devil just to pop up out of the ground and pull me down. And then I would leave that morning and just be full of guilt and full of remorse. I hate myself for, the things that I was doing, the lives I was living, and I mean, I just got real depressed and anxious, and I really thought that the world would be better off without me, and I got suicidal, and I shaved my head, and I thought that shaving my head was going to keep me sober. I had worked with a guy that shaved his head. He drank like I did, and he shaved his head one morning. I was like, man, what's up with your head? And he said that he had hooked up with his organization and that the problems of man stems from your hair, and that it's a true story. The program of action was that you shave your hair, and that means that the old man dies, or your old ideas go away, and that when your hair grows back, you're kind of reborn, you get a new way to think and all that. And I was like, man, I need something. I went home and shaved my head. And evidently I didn't do a good job, because I vaguely remember my wife came home and was like, what's up with your head? And I can remember, I think this is right, I think she cleaned it up for me, and that was the best I could come up with. I mean, when the book says we're in full flight from reality, I really thought that was going to change something. That by shaving my head, I was going to change something. And I was sober for about 3 days, and I was right back drinking again. So I see some folks in here who tried it. Frank tried it. And, he's gotten a lot more than 3 days out of it. Other folks have tried it in here, but I couldn't get long term out of it. And what, so I basically went on kind of a suicide binge, I guess. My first attempt at suicide, I took a bunch of pills and just got sick as a dog. And I made it through that. I came to a tobacco barn one morning with some girl that wasn't my wife, and I left there and I was just full of I was just disgusted with myself, and that's when I took those pills, and I stayed sick for a long time. And then one night I'd been out, I don't know how long, and I had this old dog that had mange, and the vet had given me, you won't have to tell it. I'll tell it, but the vet had given me this poison to kill the mange on the dog, and I had this bright idea that maybe if it killed mange, maybe it would kill a man. And so one night I got home and I pulled some of it up into a syringe, and I shot it up my arm, and I laid down on the kitchen floor of the house and basically died. And when I came back, I can remember fighting it, not wanting to come back, and they were resuscitating me, trying to bring me back. And the very first words out of my mouth when I finally came to was, "Leave me alone. I don't want to live." And there really was nothing dramatic about it. I mean, I didn't write a note or make any phone calls to anybody. I really wanted to just check out. I just thought that it just seemed easier for me, and it seemed like the world would be better off without me. My family would be better off without me. That led to being in the hospital for 5 days. And when I got out of the hospital, I knew that I would never go back to living that way again because of that experience. I mean, I just knew it just seemed impossible. And it just seemed like it would be impossible to go back to living like that. And I was out of the hospital for about 3 days. And the same thing happened. My mind started messing with me. It was like that devil and the angel. The devil saying, "Go ahead and get you some beer." The angel saying, "No, go home." And I didn't have any defense against the first drink. Just like our literature talks about. There was absolutely no defense against that first drink. And the thought that I can drink beer as long as I buy 8-ounce beers instead of bigger ones, that it was gonna be okay. And that's what I did. I was off to the races. I stopped and bought me an 8-pack of ponies, and I was in a Slim Jim, and I was gone. I was off to the races again. And that was 8 days. You know, I couldn't bring into my mind with sufficient amount of force what had happened 8 days before that. I couldn't bring into my mind the pain and suffering and torture that I caused my family. And that it just doesn't enter my mind with strong enough force for me to not take the first drink. And once I took the first drink, I was off to the races. The good news about all that is I've never had the mange. And I'm thinking now a combination of shaving my head and then taking the mange poison has helped my hair to grow as I've aged. That's just a theory. Yeah, I got discharged out of the Air Force. I attempted suicide one more time, and I sucked on the exhaust pipe of an 82 gram pre. I don't recommend that to anybody. And I can remember when I got through that episode, sitting in this house that I'm getting ready to lose. My wife has left me. It's dark. It's infested with fleas. And I can remember thinking, I'd sit there and I'd listen to these old Eric Clapton blues songs and old Jimmy Reed and just start crying. And I can remember having these thoughts like, look at what you people have done to me. And nobody had done anything. No people had done nothing but try to help me. But the thought was, look at what you people have done to me. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I wanted to stop and I couldn't. I tried. I'd been to a psychiatrist. I'd read books. I exercised. I tried to eat right. And I really wanted to quit and I couldn't. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And one morning I left the guy's house in Benson on foot. I was hitchhiking back to Coates. And it was like my whole life flashed before my eyes that morning. And I had these thoughts that life should just be starting, it shouldn't be ending. I just turned 22 years old. And it was like I wanted to drink, I didn't want to drink. Wanted to die, I didn't want to die. I think our literature calls that the jumping off place. And basically what happened was I said two things out loud. I said, there's got to be something better than this. And then I said, God, please help me. And what I can tell you is I've been sober ever since. I didn't have a blinding light or burning bush experience. I guess looking back on it, maybe it was like that, but I didn't experience it at that time. But I believe what happened to me was that a surrender happened to me that didn't come from me. I didn't make that happen. I just gave up and something happened. Looking back on it, it's like something came down and just picked me up and put me on a different path. And so through a series of just coincidences or circumstances, however you want to look at that, I mean, I ended up in a detox. And I had stopped at a complete stranger's house that morning. I called my dad to come asked me if he'd come pick me up. And he reluctantly did. It was amazing that he even answered the phone, given what I'd put him and his wife through for a long period of time. And he came and he got me, and I can remember telling him right when I got in the car, I told him I needed help. And I had never actually really said anything like that. I need help. And it was like this big burden lifted off of me, and I started to become free. He took me to a detox. That guy from Alcoholics Anonymous came in and talked to me when I was in detox. That guy came in and he didn't ask me a bunch of questions. He didn't ask me how I was doing. He didn't throw a meeting directory in front of me. He didn't give me a big book. He talked about himself. He talked about how he drank. He talked about what drinking did to him. He had some of the same crazy, chaotic experiences that I had. I immediately identified with that. I thought he was crazy for even saying it in public. He was saying stuff to me that I would have never told anybody. And yet he was like me, but yet he was different, and that he'd been sober for a number of years. And that's what we call identification in Alcoholics Anonymous. And by him sharing his experience with me, I was able to identify with that. And all those feelings of being different and being isolated and thinking that nobody cared kind of slowly started to disappear, because I knew there was one other guy that had done exactly the same thing I did and felt the way that I felt. And he gave me hope. And he told me to do two things. Well, he told me to do, I guess it was two things. I don't remember everything he told me, but he told me to go back to the room and get on my knees and ask for help. And he didn't, it was just kind of a matter of fact. He says, it doesn't matter if you believe or don't believe. You don't want to go back to running the streets, do you? And I was like, no. I had to concede that. And he says, well, just get on your knees and ask for help. You don't need to understand it. Just take the action. And I did that. And I was able to sleep that night. He told me the next morning when I got up to get on my knees and ask for help. And that's what I did. And I've been sober ever since. And what happened was I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous quickly. And I was introduced to our literature. I was introduced to sponsorship. I was introduced to home group. I was introduced to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a guy that I need everything that he offers me. And I realized in that first step that I was powerless over alcohol. I always wondered on me. I always asked questions. What's wrong with me? Why am I the way that I am? And I found that I was powerless over alcohol because I got a mind that tells me it's okay to drink when I shouldn't. I got a body that has some kind of physical thing that's different, that when I start drinking, I can't stop. And I was taught early on that our illness is threefold. It's spiritual, mental, and physical. And that mostly my problem is spiritual. I'm spiritually screwed up, so I need something to fix me, so I start drinking. And I drink myself into an obsession. And that I need help with that. That even by myself, I can't stop myself from drinking. I can't live with drinking, I can't live without drinking. And that's why I gotta have help. I never had any problems thinking that my life was unmanageable. I thrived on unmanageability. I loved a chaotic life. I loved all that negative attention you get from getting into trouble and things like that. I mean, I kind of thrived on all that stuff. So I mean, I never had any problems with that. But I was told that if I wanted to get better, I had to find a power greater than myself. And I was a guy that was, when I got sober, I was just confused about spiritual stuff. I mean, I had tried all kinds of things, and it didn't look like any of them worked. And all of them kind of contradicted one or the other. And I'm like, well, what's right, what's wrong? And I thank God for good men in Alcoholics Anonymous, because what I was told early on was try to just forget what you think you know. Lay all that stuff aside. And the guy that I took the steps with the first time, he kind of walked me back through my life, and he said, he pointed out times where I should have gone to prison and I didn't, times that I should have died and I didn't. And all these things that kind of, I was sitting in front of him living a crazy life, pretty much unscathed. And he looked at me and he says, do you think that you had something to do with that? And I was like, well, no, I didn't. If it was up to me, I'd have been dead or in prison. And he said, well, do you think that maybe a power helped you get through all that and helped you sit right here where you're at tonight? And I was like, well, yeah, maybe. And I said, yeah, I had to concede that too. And he says, well, just believe that whatever that power is that got you through that crazy, chaotic life drinking might help you stay sober. Don't try to understand or put a name on it or a label. Just start simple and easy. You can't understand something until you've actually taken some action and had an experience with it. And that's what I believed, that whatever that power was, that maybe it would help me stay sober. And the way that came to life with me was I started going to AA speaker meetings. And when I heard speakers tell their stories, I was like, man, if that dude can stay sober, I can stay sober. And I was a guy that was brought up to not believe anything and to be pessimistic on stuff. And for some reason, that piece, when it came to coming to AA meetings and listening to people in Alcoholics Anonymous, it kind of went away. I believed what people in AA told me was the truth. And things started happening, when I started telling the truth to people and I started getting different results. And I went and turned myself in at the courthouse for warrants and actually just told the truth and said, yep, here I am. I did it. And, it's funny that people actually work with you when you go. They're not used to that. They're like, whoa, what? He was actually telling them, come in here, we don't know what to do with you. so they drop the charges or give you an easy sentence. But things like that would happen, and I'd realize that the world and life is different than the way I perceived it. And the way I perceived it was that everybody was out to get me, everybody wanted the worst for me, and there was no way that I could actually win or that anything good would ever happen to me. And that was just all crap that was in my head. I turned my life over to that power in the third step and basically said a simple prayer and was taught that my will was my thinking and that my life was my actions. And my sponsor told me that you don't have a whole lot of control over your thinking, but you do have some control over your actions. And then what you need to do is just try to do the next right thing every day and try as best as you can to stay out of your head. And if you don't know what to do, do nothing. Some of the best advice I've ever gotten. Now, pausing can be difficult. Matter of fact, the longer you're sober, the most important word in the big book is pause. It'll save you from having to make a lot of amends sober or hurting somebody. And that's just kind of what I went on. And early on for me, that third step showed up by me going to meetings early and helping set up. Trying to be prepared if I was chairing, staying late and cleaning up, going out to coffee or food with people, staying current with the sponsor. Just simple actions that helped me change and helped me just get a little different outlook on life. It was nothing spectacular or any kind of crazy spiritual upheaval. It was just simple things that helped me. And I did a fourth and a fifth step. And I can remember sharing that stuff with a guy at about 5 weeks sober. And my life changed. For the first time in my life, I took responsibility for my own actions. I never realized that all those people that I thought tried to hurt me did nothing but try to help me. Most of them. And that I'm the one that did things that put me in those positions. I'm the one that did things to hurt people. I'm the one that made decisions that caused other people to react. That it wasn't anybody else's fault. And I saw for the first time how those resentments and my conduct kind of governed my life, and my whole life was based on fear. I was just afraid of everybody. I was afraid of what you thought. I was afraid of what you didn't think. I did all kinds of things because I was afraid of what people would think about me. I didn't do certain things because I was afraid what people were going to think about me. It was just this vicious cycle. And when I shared that stuff with somebody, I saw the truth for the first time. The truth was I'd done a poor job running my life. And I started to become free of that. And I turned that stuff over and did step 6 and 7. And early on, that first time I did 6 and 7, it just kind of seemed like filler material in the step. But yeah, I'm ready. I'm willing, and I wish it was that easy. That stuff will come back to you quick when you stay sober. But I started making amends to people. And I went back to family members, and I went and started making arrangements on people that I owed money to, bad checks I had floating around. I didn't have money to pay it back, but I went and made arrangements. I didn't hide. And I was taught to do that you got to stop looking over your back and you got to face people. And when you first get sober, it doesn't seem like any of that stuff's ever going to get worked out. That you're going to be just in debt forever. You're going to have people out after you forever, and you just never. And one of those financial amends, it took me 10 years to pay the money back. I gave them money every month for 10 years. Got paid off. And I was just taught to do that stuff, and my life just started to change. And I was able to actually start helping other people. I was able to actually just continue to look at myself, and I started going into prisons after I was sober about 3 months. And I was taught that my job now was to help out and to pass this on and to give it back, that you can't keep it unless you give it away. And I thank God for people that kind of instilled that in me and told me that was the way to stay sober, and that was the way to grow spiritually and to change your life. And I tell you, over the last, Kirk took a lot of my time. I thought you said you weren't going to. Jeez, man. Don't let him do history anymore. I've had a blessed life, sober. I've been divorced sober. I stole money from work sober. I went back and made an amends for stealing money from work sober because of good sponsorship. I got through a divorce sober without any kind of fighting or arguing because of men in AA that showed me how to do that. I actually learned how to date sober instead of just jumping in the sack and then trying to form a relationship around that. It doesn't work real well. I got remarried sober and was taught how to treat a lady sober by Men in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started practicing steps and traditions at work and went from basically sweeping the floor in a company and stealing money from them to becoming a president in their organization because of Alcoholics Anonymous and men in AA that taught me how to do that. I've been able to give back to my community. I've been involved in all kinds of organizations to help homelessness and kids and battered women because of Alcoholics Anonymous and men in AA that taught me how to do that and told me that was part of my responsibility. I took so much from the community, it's my job to give back. And I've been able to be a leader in my family because of Alcoholics Anonymous and because men in AA that taught me how to do that. Now that's sometimes a pain in the butt when you get those calls from your sisters and your parents, but what an honor and a privilege to actually go from being. I showed my grandma's one time for Thanksgiving in pretty bad shape and had to leave. And now I'm asked to speak at funerals. I gave a eulogy at my uncle's funeral. I gave a eulogy at my grandfather's funeral. I've been able to help my family out spiritually, financially, mentally, because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And most importantly, AA has given me purpose in that I'm not a guy that believes Alcoholics Anonymous is a selfish program. Certainly selfish in the sense that when I get sober, I got to do certain things to get a foundation, but at some point that should shift. And that the gift I've been given by other people for free should be shared with others. And that it's really an unselfish act, that my job now is I've been put in a position where I'm recovered from alcoholism. I've got a new mind. And that my job is to share that with other people. And I believe 100% what our book says is that we've been given the power to avert death and misery for others. And when I got sober, a guy came in and helped me on a Sunday morning. He didn't know who I was. He didn't care what I smelled like or what I looked like or where I'd been. He just came in there trying to pass on the message that had been passed to him. And my job is to do that to other people and to help other people try to have the same experience and the same chance at recovery that I had. And I can't do that if I'm at home watching Jeopardy every night or at the soccer game every weekend. There's nothing wrong with doing any of that, but if I do that every night, I'm selling myself short, and I'm not fulfilling my responsibility and my obligation to the man that passes on to me. So I'm a guy I'm blessed, and I'm overpaid in every area of my life because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I believe if I continue to pass that on to others, I'll keep staying sober, and I'll continue to have a defense against that first drink, which is if I don't maintain my sobriety, I'm going to drink again. And no, I don't want that to happen because I've been given the gift of freedom through Alcoholics Anonymous, and I want to maintain that. So again, congratulations on 14 years to the group. God bless you.